Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. If others can join, great. I appreciate all of you guys taking the time, and hopefully I can add some value for you, give you some great ideas. Since we have a small group, if you have questions or thoughts, feel free to just chime in as I go. We can make this pretty interactive, and let's get started. So just for background, most of you I know on different levels, but my big thing is use your power to empower. And I believe in kind of spreading and sharing the knowledge, insights, skills that I've gained and using that to help other businesses, entrepreneurs, brands grow and progress, reach their potential. And ultimately, I want to empower people who have traditionally been marginalized or withheld from power. So I work with lots of small businesses, mid-sized businesses, and definitely many that are led by women, including woman Elena here, and people of color, women of color, men of color. I've been in branding for 13 years now on every aspect of it, from creative direction, strategy, design, web design, marketing strategy, you name it. So I have a lot of the bits and pieces to kind of connect for people. And I do the strategy side and the creative. So it kind of fits them two together, excuse me. So I think the challenge with branding is that it's a really long game and it's hard to make a noticeable difference overnight. And it can feel really overwhelming. So I think the win is to find bits and pieces that you can do incrementally over time. And this is even more true if you're a small business and you have a limited team, limited marketing or branding resources. I know that it's true in my own business. There are just so many boxes. There's so much that you could do. So how do you start? How do you start to make progress? So I wanted to key in on 10 different things that require a fairly small amount of resources, really just time. And you may not be able to do all 10 of them in 1 week, but you could certainly do one, probably more. And it's a step in the right direction towards getting more clarity around your brand. Because I work with many smaller or mid-sized businesses, these are more tailored to smaller teams, or, a one-person team, which I can relate to quite a bit. But these are techniques that even the biggest brands use or should use. So first, get consistent. If you follow me on social media, I've been talking a lot about consistency lately, just in terms of goals. Like I said, branding is a long game. So the goal, the idea is to use the same consistent message over time to build that understanding and become known for your specific message. The whole fundamental idea of branding is about consistency. And so when someone thinks of you, your product, your service, you are known for X, Y, or Z. Now, you can't be consistent this week. You can start, you can't build that all this week. But one of the first things that I see often, I'm constantly analyzing brands for competitive analysis, is that their digital presence is really inconsistent. So starting with social media as a perfect example, as well as their website, any kind of network that they belong to, they use a logo here as a profile picture, a photo here, they're not the same, their message isn't the same. Many of them don't even have their core message on their digital, different components of their digital presence. And so that's one very small step that you can take immediately to put your brand forward in the best way today. I mean, this can take a half hour to go through all of your LinkedIn. If you have a personal brand or a service-based brand, your all different social media platforms, your website, any landing pages, all of the above. Just make sure that they align. There's some amount of tailoring that you may do for a specific platform. For example, an Instagram bio has different best practices than a LinkedIn bio. But the core takeaway should be the same unless you have a very highly segmented audience. So that's one part of getting consistent. But another is creating systems that enable discipline around your marketing. So whether you're doing email campaigns, ad campaigns, social media, content marketing, it takes a lot of time to build traction, and you may not see results immediately, but that consistency grows on itself, and you have to start somewhere. And sometimes we get in our own way, and if you don't see results immediately, you kind of stop, or you give yourself a little bit more leeway. And the thing about consistency is that it takes discipline and willpower. Willpower is a finite resource for people. You only have so much of it in a given day or week or month. So what you want to do is create systems that turn these things into habits, which are instantaneous. You don't even have to think about them. And we have endless resources for. So what you could do this week is create a schedule. And it may be, to use my own for an example, I post an article every Monday. I post on social media 5 days a week. And I have on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, I have a different focus for that social media post. So one might be a quote. One is a video that's kind of a broader life lesson. One is a specific tip. Now you can take that kind of strategy and apply it to your own business, but it starts with having a schedule, and then you can hold yourself accountable to that. Any questions on this first one?
No, ma'am, not yet.
Awesome. All right. Second, we have not talk to your audience, but listen to your audience. And I know this is something that I've helped Elena with, I've helped a lot of my clients with, is actually getting in touch with your audience, your current customers or clients, or people that are prospects for you or in part of your broader audience, and learning about them. I think many business owners have a little bit of fear around this. Maybe they don't want to bother them, or it just feels a little scary. But on the flip side, the more you engage your audience and give them opportunities to give you feedback, the more you listen to them, the more they're endeared to your brand. And it really builds loyalty. But you also get really valuable information. I don't think you could possibly know your audience well enough. The more information you get, the better. And you may have a singular segment, may have multiple segments to your audience, but you want to know them like the back of your hand, be able to bring them to life. What do they want, need, care about? And the first way to find that out is to actually ask them. So this week, what you could do is put out a little survey. If you are interested in using this step, I have a resource on my website that I can send to you that has lots of ideas and questions for what to ask. So you're not starting from nothing. But I use either SurveyMonkey or Google Forms to conduct a survey, usually no more than 10 questions. And the goal depends on what you're trying to find out. So you may be trying to learn more about your audience and their preferences and what they want, need, care about, where they shop, what their interests are. And those are certain type of questions. You may be trying to learn how they perceive your brand or how satisfied they are with your brand. Those are different, or you can do a little bit of both. But you want to keep it short and sweet, and you can send it to a small group. You can send it to your whole email database. And with a survey, just so you know, and you don't feel like, oh my gosh, no one's engaging with me, you want to expect a very small response rate. In the single digits usually is kind of the baseline. But even in the single digits, you're getting more information than you had, that you can hopefully extrapolate and kind of add insights to your understanding of your customers. But I love to complement that with interviews. Interviews give you the really deep stuff, the insights into how people really feel. It gives you stories that really stick with you about what your customers care about or what they need. And I think those are the ones that really build lots of loyalty. You'll find if you reach out to someone you've worked with, you have some type of relationship with, and say, hey, I'd love to pick your brain. Your insights would be so valuable to me. They feel really important and really valued. And you'd be surprised what people would be willing to do and share. And you're going to strengthen that relationship, but also gain super valuable information about your audience that you can use to market and build your brand. And for interviews, I tend to keep it short and sweet. So like no more than 15 minutes. You want to focus on the most pressing questions. Once again, those may vary depending on your objective, but everyone has 15 minutes in the day or can carve it out. So at the very least this week, you could reach out to those people and on the best case, get a chance to chat with them. Any questions? All right. Next, we have create a persona. How many of you guys use customer personas already or have one?
You mean truly carved out, like very fleshed out?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay.
Not yet.
So I think that's normal, and even the biggest marketing teams often do not have them, or they have them, but they don't use them. And it's really easy to define these things at one point, and you kind of forget about it, and you don't use it actively when you're marketing. And think, like if you name your persona Laura, like, okay, today we're talking to Laura. It's very easy for it to just become an exercise that doesn't live in your actual day-to-day. And when that happens, you often find that there's a big shift from who you thought your persona was to who you're actually attracting, or who you're actually marketing to. So one of the easiest exercises you can do to instantly get a little bit of clarity in your brand is to either create or update a persona. If you're interested in doing this, I have some templates that I use. This is something I do on a regular basis for clients. And you want to look at kind of all across the board. Like imagine this is a real person that you just met at a networking event, or you just got a chance to chat with one-on-one. What's their demographic data? Name, are they married? Do they have kids? Age, what do they do? But then further than that, you want to kind of create a backstory for them in your mind. Like, what was their upbringing like? What's their values? What are their personality traits? How do they fit in to their community, and what roles do they play? And then you take that and you look at your specific industry, product, or service, and analyze, okay, when it comes to, skincare, when it comes to photography, when it comes to speech writing, like what does this person want or need? What are their objections? What are the challenges they face? And take it a step further. So using JT, for example, he's a speech writer. Usually they don't just want a speech. They want the authority or the leadership or the confidence or the things that come with that. It's a very emotional thing. And that's the case with any product or service. What are they truly seeking deep down psychologically, like in their heart and soul, that they are kind of trying to fill that gap for? And so there's really no complete persona. I think it's something that just evolves over time as your brand evolves, as your audience evolves. There are so many factors that kind of shift these things. So it's a point in time picture that you can use, and then just gradually grow with it as your brand grows. And once again, you may have multiple segments of your audience, so you may want to factor that in. For example, I know Nicolette has a few different segments of her audience in terms of people who want personal branding photography versus someone who wants glamour photography. And they have different wants and needs and emotions associated with that. Sure. Any questions on personas?
Yeah, Liz, I have one. And
Sure.
What you're saying is fantastic. Makes so much sense. Do you think that a good supplement to having done the survey that will help create the persona is to go back through notes from previous clients and previous engagements? Do you think that's a helpful way to maybe fill in some of the gaps?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of you have an idea of who your audience is based on your experiences. I mean, unless you're starting today, which none of you are. So that you're going to have real life examples, and that's a great way to do it. So, for me, when I'm building a persona for a client, I have those notes firsthand because I've interviewed them. But in your business, especially as you're making that sale and learning about them, and of course, creating the end product for them, you get different level of insights. So the more information and inputs, the better. You just want to find a balance that's manageable for you. But like I said, the layers really add depth to it and, help enhance it as you grow. Awesome. Okay, so next we have analyze your competitors. So this is one of the major steps that I complete anytime I'm building a strategy for a client. And it's just good to keep an eye on what is out there in the market. And ideally, you have a unique competitive position that you can defend over time and that you stand out. But there are other reasons to investigate what people are doing. And some of it is just getting other good ideas. You may find that on a competitor's website, they're offering a specific resource or a campaign or some kind of program or promo that inspires you to do either something similar or your own take on it. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have, especially in like the B2B or the service industry, there's so much that you can learn from competitors in terms of the content that they're producing that is just as valuable for your audience. And there's no reason you can't use that as inspiration and create your own take on it. But you also want to look for opportunities to stand out. And even in crowded spaces, you may find that they're speaking to different audiences or they're nuanced. One of my biggest recommendations for small businesses is to find a niche and really key in on that niche. I think it's an advantage since you don't have the marketing resources to appeal to everyone. And so even in a really crowded space, those brands are going to be appealing to different niches potentially. That was the case with Elena, who I recently worked with. She's in the skincare space and there are a lot of competitors, but no one was keying in on her exact audience. And so we were able to find that that's an opportunity for her to define that audience and cater to them. There are a lot of things you can look at when you're looking at your competitors. So when I'm starting out, usually I look at their brand positioning, and that's really what's the big message that they're saying they offer to people? How are they saying that they're different? And what are the support messages? So those are things in service. It's like expertise, experience, innovation, or it might be the benefits that they list of a specific product. And those are usually repeated kind of consistently across competitors. There's a lot less differentiation with support messages. And part of that is because it's important. Those are things usually your audience needs to hear, but you can find a way to say them differently. So looking at the different types of messages they use is really important to find a way to say things in your own way. But you can also look at the tactics they use. For example, you can sign up for their email list and see what email content are they giving to people? How frequently are they doing it? What are their landing pages like? What is their website like in general? Is it a positive experience? Does it have a lot of resources? Is it straight to the point in terms of sales? And then of course, what type of content are they providing that's value added? So there is really the sky's the limit, but once again, you just start where you start and step by step, you gain more information. But it's always valuable to take a look. And usually, you can spend 30 minutes to an hour looking at a few of them. You can go really in depth, but just setting that baseline is always helpful. I also have a template for competitive analysis if you're interested, to just get you going on what to look at. Any questions on competitors?
I have another question.
Yeah, great.
Hope that's all right.
Of course.
I'm wondering if you have a take on how far outside the box is appropriate to go. And so let me give an example from my own business. So I'm a speechwriter and a presentation consultant. And what I've noticed over the last couple of years is doing this is that a lot of people that do what I do, they emphasize on their experience in writing and how beautifully they write, and they post like samples of their speeches on their website.
Sure.
And that's great. But what I've discovered in working with clients is that that is really less important to them than how do you help me bring out the greatness
Yes, the
that
process.
I have inside myself. So, I mean, how appropriate do you feel it is for someone to kind of zig when everyone else is zagging?
I
So to
think
speak?
it's very important. So sometimes you're looking at your competitors. The baseline is to see what they're doing so you know what not to do. It's kind of finding the balance, and maybe some of that does come with experience, but you also know your audience, so you know what's going to be important to them. And so you're going to look and say, okay, everyone here is talking about this thing, but I know with my audience that's not important. So by talking about this other thing, I'm going to stand out. But the flip side is that there may actually be good stuff. You know, you kind of have to use your own judgment to sift through it and say like, oh, well, you know, they presented it that way. That's interesting. Maybe that would also be relevant for my audience. I think it starts with knowing your audience well, and
Mhm.
then kind of interpreting as you look at your competitors what you can take from them or not, what you can do differently that's going to fit and be relevant to your audience.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah, of course.
that in terms of looking at your immediate competition? I know I sent you some people who are here in LA, some people who are not. I shared with Liz some websites of competitors or people I would like to emulate, but is it worth more to focus on local competitors and therefore you're knowing what you're dealing with, or does it not matter?
I think it depends on your brand. So for you being a photographer based in LA, probably a key demographic of your audience is going to be their geographic situation. You know, they're probably going to be with regional or local. And in that regard, I think it's good to look at direct competitors in your area. There's also an element of looking at aspirational competitors, or someone maybe a little bigger than you in size or brand recognition. That is something you aspire to be, and you can,
Okay.
that's more about learning from them.
Okay.
And seeing like, what do they do that I want to implement in my branding? Maybe not directly, but an interpretation of. So I think, you know, you gave me a mix of photographers that are local as well as some that are very established, kind of, you know, standouts in the field that I think are aspirational. For other businesses, like for me, geography isn't really a factor.
Right.
So it's more about, for my audience, it's more about the psychographics and the needs. Like, you know, values are really important for me. And then obviously someone who has a business. Those are kind of the two
Right.
biggest factors. And so if I'm looking at my competitors, it might be a mixture. It might be some big consulting firms or some big agencies, but it also might be smaller, kind of nichier people who position themselves like me. And it's good to have a little bit of a kind of scale, a landscape of different types of competitors.
Okay.
Because you can learn from all of them. And then I would say keep it like no more than 10, but I think maybe in like the 5 to 10 range is probably best, so you're not getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I rarely analyze competitors for a client and find that they're all good at branding,
Right.
which is interesting. The encouraging thing about that is that they might be good at business, and so they've grown to a certain point without investing in their brand, which I think is encouraging as an entrepreneur because you can build and connect with people and grow even if you have limited resources. So most often I think you'll find what not to do.
Yeah.
But it does depend on the industry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Next we have storytelling. So storytelling is really essential to the human condition. It kind of transcends time, culture, language. It's just how we think and how we connect with other people. It builds empathy. It builds trust. It's really essential in branding for those reasons and creating an emotional connection with people, whether that's connecting on a very like deep, intimate level with vulnerability, whether it's through honesty, building trust, transparency, or even entertaining laughter, telling funny stories that make people want to come back and listen again and again. So it's an essential kind of tool in your toolbox when it comes to building out your overarching long-term brand perception, but also kind of the short-term immediate marketing tactics. And it's, I would say, underutilized. I think that's because people aren't always comfortable telling their own story, or they don't know whose story to tell or how to tell it. Maybe you're not very comfortable being vulnerable, or there's a certain line, but you can implement it in a way that fits who you are and your personality and your brand. So the easiest way is to start with telling your own story. And the interesting thing about where we are in terms of consumers and social media and this kind of culture is that people don't necessarily expect perfection and polished, finished products. Like, you can put out a selfie video that is emotional and honest, and that can resonate just as much, if not more, than a high production video. So that's the starting point potentially, is, okay, tell my own story. How did you get here? What do you care about? Why are you doing this? It's not an easy road to own your own business and to try to build a brand. So why do you come back every day? What is it about that? And you'll find that that's going to resonate with way more people than you would ever expect. And then if you just said, hey, here's what I do. So that's one. And that's something you could do right after this call if you wanted. You can also write it out. There's not a medium that really is the right answer. It kind of depends on your audience and also what you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable on video, then don't do video. There's not a right or wrong answer. But you can take that a step further and kind of implement storytelling in a longer term strategy to help build your brand. So I don't think that most of you on this call have employees, but a few do. And another thing is to tell your employees stories. That's part of building culture, and culture and brand are two sides of the same coin. So you can have them share their experiences working there, why they do it, their own personal story, and how your brand fits into that or why it aligns with them. That's really valuable in kind of building this perception of values for your brand, which we'll talk about in a bit. But then you also want to share the stories of your customers, and that really contributes to building a tribe. So once again, if you're reaching out and doing a survey, sometimes I'll include the last question: would you be willing to share your story with us? And more often than not, people are totally willing. One, because everyone has a little bit of ego and they would like to have some visibility and feel connected to you and say like, oh yeah, you're giving me a platform, great. But you can do the same thing with interviews. So usually an interview will result in some type of testimonial, which can also be repurposed either in text, or you can use the audio or shoot something afterwards. There's a lot of flexibility, and the point is just to start. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be high production, but getting your customer stories reinforces the brand values, and people who self-identify with that person are going to automatically connect to your brand. So for example, using Nicolette as an example, I had a chance to chat with one of her clients, and it was a glowing review, and she talked about how the experience working with Nicolette as a photographer made her feel so valued and comfortable and beautiful and all of these positive things. You put that story out there, other people who want to feel those things, who want to feel valued and beautiful just as they are, especially, as a woman in their 50s, though, they're going to say, I connect with that, that's who I want to be, and automatically kind of develop this relationship with your brand. So this week, what you can do, you can get started on your own if you haven't already, if you don't do that. Another kind of element of this be consistent idea is that you have to tell your story over and over and over again. Just because you did it one time a year ago or 6 months ago doesn't mean that people remember or are paying attention, because your customers probably aren't thinking about you most of the time. So tell it again, tell it in a different way. Or you can reach out to those people, your employees, your customers, your heroes, people who mentored you, who made you want to get into the industry, who had some effect on you, and say, hey, would you mind sharing your story with me? Any questions on storytelling?
I do. Could one use so if, let's say you're talking about the client experience and it's a variation, it's always a variation on the same theme, right? How do you not wear it out to death, so that you're giving new viewers, let's say on Instagram or on Facebook, new viewers the opportunity to feel it, and yet you're not hammering the same, for those who are following you, or does it not matter because no one's consistent anyways?
So I actually get this question a lot, and I would say it doesn't matter until your audience tells you it matters.
Okay.
So once again, I think we're so in our own heads about what we're saying, and we know everything we've ever posted or shared or put out there. So it feels like a lot to us. You're like, I said this last time, or, I can keep telling the story. Most people haven't seen all of them. If we're using social media for an example, most of your audience doesn't see everything you post. And if they do, they don't remember, or thousands, millions of kind of things have filtered through their minds since then. So the short answer is it doesn't matter. But if you do find that it's getting worn out, or if you get that feedback, then you want to listen. Or over time, if it just your engagement with those types of stories just totally plummets, then you want to listen. However, keep in mind that you want to listen to the feedback you get from your ideal clients, from your target audience. You may have people who follow you who have nothing to do with your target audience. And if they're giving you feedback, who cares?
That's true.
If it's not resonating with your audience, then you want to be concerned. So I think most of the time it doesn't matter, and it's better to err on the side of repetitive and, really, really reinforcing and pushing the message than the fear of, kind of overwhelming someone, beating them over the head with it.
Okay. Yeah. It's not like I got 1 million followers paying attention to me every day. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a great question, but ultimately, I think it comes down to that innate fear that kind of surrounds putting yourself out there, and of how it's going to be perceived. But it's something that you'll learn over time as you get feedback. And there are so many ways to tell, your example, the experience that you create with your clients. There are so many ways to tell that. Different voices, you key in on a different aspect of it. You tell it from your perspective, their perspective, the end product perspective. So you can get really creative.
Okay, cool.
All right, next we have map your customer journey. This is one of the ones that I would say very few small businesses ever do, and very few large businesses do. So if you're not familiar with customer journeys, it's the concept that people go from not having any idea who you are to becoming aware of your brand, ultimately becoming a customer or client of your brand, and then hopefully all the way down to becoming this loyal, raving advocate or brand ambassador. And along the way, someone might have thousands of interactions with you. If you're a big brand, think of Nike. You've heard their name so many different times. But even in the case of a small brand, there are so many different touch points. So you can kind of just do an exercise now and mentally, from the time someone knows who you are to the time they're a loyal client, how do they interact with you? Do they hear about you from someone? Do they see an ad? Do you email them? Do they get an automated responder? Do they get a product? What's the packaging like? If they have a problem and there's some type of customer service, who do they call or talk to? And what is that experience like? There are so many touch points along the way that have an opportunity to either totally align with your brand and reinforce it, or totally disconnect with your brand and create a negative experience. And the challenge with that is that it's a lot to manage and maintain and kind of factor in. Many of us are here in service-based, but not everyone. So if you have something product-based, there's even more touch points because they have the actual product experience. there's an e-commerce site, like does the cart work the way they want it to work? Is the payment processing simple? All of those things can make it frustrating or really positive. And ideally, every one of those steps, big or small, reinforces your branding. So this idea of consistency. And an example of that is a very small example is called microcopy. So let's say that someone submits their email on your website for a freebie or a coupon or something like that. And instead of saying the default, like, thank you for subscribing, check your email for, you can insert your personality into that. Now, depending on your brand, that may be playful, or it may be, just a little bit of a hint of the kind of tone. So, JT, you may have a little bit more of a serious formal brand, for example. But though even that tiny little thank you message is an opportunity to be unique and stand out more and reinforce your brand. So the idea of mapping your customer experience is kind of taking this almost flow chart. So here's one end where they don't know who we are, and here's this other end where they're our biggest fan, and just brainstorming what are all of the possible things that they could see along the way or touch points that they could connect with or not, and are there any of those that we can improve, or is there an opportunity to do it better, or are there any that are a problem? An example that I think most brands have a challenge with at first is their customer service experience. That may not relate to all of us, since many of us are small brands, but if someone has a problem, how do you handle it in a way that reinforces positivity, even when you're dealing with a difficult situation? If someone has a return, how do you actually make that a positive part of your experience? So those are just things to brainstorm and think, oh, here's one small trick we could do today that just makes this a little bit better. It elevates it a little bit more. And over time, all of those little decisions and little improvements of touch points reinforce your brand all the way along. Any questions on customer journey? All right. Number 7 is define your core values. How many of you have core values for your brand that you've actually written out or defined? Awesome.
I think I do. If not written out, certainly in my head. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think this is really important, especially as you grow, but even, if you're a one-person team. And I think this is an interesting environment with the pandemic to see how your values are showing, for businesses. I think we see lots of examples of brands that are really living their values and others not so much. And values are at that intersection of culture and your brand. So it's, how do you do business? Where do you draw the line? Like, what's your line in the sand on how you're going to treat people, where you're going to stand up for your customers or stand up for your employees or for yourself. And those have an opportunity to set people apart. So defining them is the first step, but you may find that they change as you go. And what I most commonly see is that people have values. I think the kind of traditional standpoint is to have, like, you pick a noun, like integrity, I think is probably the most common one. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's an important ideal to uphold in your business. The difficult part of it is that everyone can say it, and that it's hard for someone to know what that actually means in practice. So if you're hiring someone and you say, we behave with integrity, it should be common sense, but people don't always know what that looks like. So I like that more descriptive core values. My kind of starting point is, we believe in doing this, or we believe, what do you believe? What are your beliefs about the world, about business, about how people should be treated, that are what you uphold on a day-to-day basis? And so one example, instead of saying honesty and just having that word up there, you could say, we believe in trusting people with the truth at all times. That kind of paints a little bit more vivid picture and tells someone a little bit more what you actually do. And so it's just helpful to create that connection. And then as you build a team, be able to roll that out and give them kind of guidelines for how to behave that are more tangible. I think values are important to know in general, just for your own mindset for your brand. They become more important as you grow. But if you don't have values defined yet, or you think they need an update, it's definitely something that you can do in an hour, 2 hours, just kind of a starting point. And like I said, pick the things that come to you immediately that are most important to you. I say maybe 4 to 6 or so. And then I like to complement it with a statement that really describes, what that value means to you. All right. Number 8, engage your tribe. So this one has come up a lot over the last few weeks with different clients or friends who own businesses reaching out like, okay, what can I do right now? I can't sell so much, or people aren't doing business in the same way that they normally are. What are the options? And you can get really creative, especially virtually, digitally. But the big idea right now, I think, and in general, as part of your ongoing strategy, is to make it not about selling and make it about engaging. There are always times when it has to be about selling. That's period. This is commerce. But you can add value to your brand if you do more and you go above and beyond that. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but some of the things I've seen people have success with over the last few weeks are kind of creating community. So give people an opportunity to show up around your brand and your lifestyle or your realm of expertise that's not about you, but that they can connect and bond over it, and kind of find community there. That may or may not be relevant depending on your industry, but often it is, especially I think in more retail-centric products. Another is kind of delivering a Q&A or a panel or some type of thought leadership that's maybe more conducive to B2B brands or service oriented, where you're providing thought leadership, value added insights, and giving people kind of a destination to attend. We're seeing all kinds of that. So that's maybe not the most innovative, but there's no reason you can't also be doing it. Another one that I think people sometimes overlook is a social media contest or a challenge. So I have a client and a friend who I helped with a few weeks ago create a social media contest, and it was around user-generated content. So you offer some kind of prize to the winner, some kind of incentive, and ask people to create whatever it is that makes sense for your brand. It might be sharing your products, it might be utilizing them in some way, or it may not be about your product or service at all, and it's just around kind of the lifestyle or something that you're promoting in general with your brand. They share it, you share the best ones, they vote with their likes, and so they're encouraging people to vote for them, and you get a lot of brand awareness. It really can go viral and just generate eyeballs that you wouldn't normally get. But it also creates community. It's fun for people. A lot of people are bored, they don't know what to do with themselves right now, or they're stressed and they need diversion. So it's another great way to engage them. Similarly, if you have insights to share online education, you can give some away for free. You cannot give it away for free. It kind of depends on your audience and what makes sense for you, but it's another way to add value and engage people. If you're big on social media and you have someone who's an influencer or has a comparable following, or not, you can do social media takeover. So you trade each other's social media for a day and take over and kind of share a day in the life or share your own insights, and you get the benefit of experiencing each other's following for yourself. And it definitely is mutually beneficial. So that's a way to engage with partners, or kind of other peers. And then, virtual networking, it can take a lot of forms. So not that I was planning to do this, but hypothetically, this could become a virtual networking group with, 6 people who have business challenges and are interested in kind of picking each other's brains. You can make it fun. You can do a brunch. You can do all kinds of like events that give someone an opportunity to show up and connect with other people, which is definitely a challenge right now. Any questions on engage your tribe? Awesome. Okay, just 2 more. Number 9 is actually kind of related. So create value add content. This is important all the time. It's a huge way to build your brand, no matter what industry you're in. And it's something that there's no kind of limit to what you could eventually do. So you just want to start somewhere and start kind of checking those boxes. So looking at what your audience wants or needs most this week or in general, what's one new piece that you could get out? And it might be an article, it might be some type of guide resource, it could be a tool, a template for them. And thinking JT, for example, the idea is not to solve a problem completely because it's not realistic. And you're not saying that your services are not needed. It's to get them a little further along. So like you could hypothetically put a basic outline for the structure of a successful speech. And at least that's interest piece. Some might use it and some might not, depending on their personality. I would imagine maybe your clientele is not the DIYers. But you're offering something to build trust and to demonstrate your expertise and to get them engaged. And in retail, this kind of takes a different life. So it might be some more of those engagement things. It could be events, it might be videos. It's really tailored to your audience. The idea is giving them something for free that you don't have to do, but that shows that you care about them, that you want to help them. And there tend to be 3 objective value add content. It either informs, it entertains, or it inspires. A given brand might do all 3. So you don't have to pick one general, but you should pick one for each piece. But that said, based on your industry, it might be more important to entertain, or it might be more important to inspire. So like Elena, I could see all 3 of those resonating with your audience. So informing them about skincare could guide to creating a skincare routine. It could be entertaining them with stories of your family. So there are a lot of different options. And, Nicolette, I think, could think. So you're inspiring them with photos or with tips on how to get to that place of feeling confident and beautiful. There are areas that you go, but the idea is to just start with one and just gradually build it over time. You don't have to conquer the whole world in 1 week. You put something out there, you see the response, you improve it. Done is better than perfect, I always tell myself. And so I think it's something that you can quickly check the box and at least get something out. Yeah, I love that, Elena. That's great. Any questions on value add content?
All right, Liz, I don't have a question, but
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else is hearing this. It didn't get in the way of what you were saying. I understood everything, but there was a little distortion on the mic, like a crackling sound. I don't know if it's just me, but I thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah. I think I noticed that has been happening with my speakers like the last day or 2. So I think it's on my end. Let me know. Hopefully, it seems like it happens after a long Zoom. So hopefully let me know if you hear and I'll myself. And then that's something I'll definitely have to figure out.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, it's not getting in the way of anything you're saying.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know. So
Thank you.
This is all great stuff. So I don't want to be
Appreciate it.
that guy, but
No.
yeah.
Thank you. All right, on to the last one. Create a scorecard. So how many of you are kind of actively engaged in like monitoring your analytics, the results you're getting from your marketing?
Not me.
So I feel like it's one of those things like going to the dentist or, getting like lab test results. Like some don't want to know, but the results are very empowering. So there are also so many data pieces, so many metrics that it can be overwhelming to figure out what to track and what's important. So I have been helping this client the past few weeks create a scorecard that's specific for them. And I found that I really liked the process and the approach and thought it might be helpful for other people. So the idea is that first you have to have goals. So the goal might be more sales, more revenue. Or the goal might be brand awareness. Get more people at the top of the funnel, get your name out there. The goal might be repeat customers. You have to start with your goals, which, may seem up, but a lot of businesses don't have set goals. So you want to think about what those are. And then for each of them, pick a few of the data points that make the most sense for that. So if the answer is to grow your revenue, which for most people, that's one of them. Obviously, sales, that's a big part of it. That would be one of your KPIs. But that's a whole process, it's like a really whole top to bottom funnel that gets there. So along the way, there might be some others, such as total web traffic, that indicates you're filling the top of the funnel, or total new leads, that shows moving them down the funnel and converting to leads. So you'll see on the net, I have an example, but you want to pick a few for each of your goals and then set a baseline. So the baseline might be today or this month. And then you want to pick a target. What do we want to get it to? What's your stretch goal? And then every month on a consistent basis, you track your progress. And the point is not that you make yourself feel bad if you're not reaching those goals or that it's a scary thing. Just knowledge that helps you decide, is this thing working? Do I need to try something different? Do I need to put more resources into this part of it? And kind of fine tune your strategy as you go. So that may be a little tricky to picture. So this is an example that I created for someone. This person is a very, very logic-driven person. So it might be a little bit too in-depth depending on your style. But basically you can see the idea is that for this case, we broke revenue growth into different parts of the funnel. And for each of those, a few differences around what they do in their marketing. These might be different for you. And you measure, and based on how you perform each month, you can give yourself a score. You assign a weight, and that tells you the overall health. So you can calculate an overall health score for your whole marketing. Now, this is a little bit depth. You don't have to go this technical or this complex of kind of formulating it, but the idea is to have something, and you can implement something now and have one already. Or if you do this, you can set your goals and set your baseline so that you know where you're going next. And the thing about is it's just something you shoot for. And if you don't hit it, you don't hit it. There's no hellfire rains down or, anything. It's just for you. It's for your business. And it's just a milestone to measure against, and you track as you go. So I would recommend some type of system. If this isn't the one for you, there are a lot of options out there. I've been sharing, I don't know if any of you have used DataBox, but it's a good way to aggregate all your data from different digital sources and create little dashboards, if that's more your style. I use it because on Instagram, you can't get cumulative data that tracks over time. And with this system, you can. So that's a good one. Obviously, analytics is important. But you want to kind of get a diversified snapshot. And then the other key to this is just picking a few. There are, like I said, thousands of metrics, even just for a website. But not all of them are created equal, or you can't measure every single thing constantly. You're just going to be weighed down. So pick the ones that you decide matter most to you for now and focus on those and growing those. Any questions on creating a scorecard? Awesome. Well, that's all that I have for you guys. If you have any other questions, we have a couple minutes and I'm happy to answer them. But I hope helpful and gives you, something, at least one takeaway that you can get going on to start to improve and grow your brand.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Number one, this was awesome. Thank you so much for offering. I'm doing a survey with a client. It has a beauty spa.
Mhm.
And we want to know if people are interested in all the emails she sends, which I think are way too many, and who goes to the website, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we're doing it in SurveyMonkey. She asked if we should send it out as an email, and should it also be on her website? What do you think?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that there are going to be different types of people that are engaged in different platforms. So, for example, if I do a survey, I'll encourage my clients to definitely start with an email. I think that's fine. But share on their social media if they have an engaged following, or definitely on the, because there are nuances to those type of people. You know, if you engage best and most in email, you are a little bit different than the person who engages most on social media. And so I think you get a little bit more of a diverse sampling. And then you can see if there's a distinction in the results that you get. For example, I had working with Ryan's girlfriend on her brand. She had super engaged email audience. I think that her response rate for the survey that we did was it was crazy. And at this very same day, I launched a survey with a different client who had actually a larger subscription base, but barely any responses. But when she posted on Instagram, it just spiked. What we learned from that for the client was actually that she has a huge following on Instagram, but those people aren't really target audience. They're representative of a different audience. So it was because we could kind of sift between where we got the responses, it actually gave us another layer of insight that we need attracting more people like her email people. And the Instagram following wasn't adding as much value for her brand.
And did you use the same questions on each medium?
Yeah. You could do a different version if you wanted to kind of test for something. So like if you were specifically trying to get different insights, I guess, but I would probably just use the same one and see what you get. I would expect that putting it on the website, you're going to get lower results. That's probably normal than people who have already opted in to your email list. But yeah, I think that's a good idea, just so that you get a little bit of diversity of perspectives.
Thank you. Great.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right.
Yeah, but stuff that needs one-on-one.
Okay. Well done, chat.
This is awesome, honey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just
All
want to
right.
say
Well,
thank you.
you're very welcome.
Great.
If any of you are interested in the slides or any of the temp resources I mentioned, just let me know. Shoot me an email or something. I'm happy to share. And if any questions come up along the way, I'm all ears. So thank you so much for me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. Well done. Nice one.
Very good.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.